Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Marketly Hub podcast. I am your host, Edward Enejo, and we'll be talking about everything that gives you advantage so that you can thrive in your life, your career, or business. Today, we are having such an amazing guest. I'm excited to discuss about ideas and concepts that would help you thrive in your life. Let us dive in. From a young age, Michael Tabirade's life has been a narrative of humble beginnings, ambition, continuous learning, and overcoming challenges. He is a senior freelance contractor and the founder of Masteri Group, a distinguished coach training provider committed to propelling leaders and professionals forward. With Masteri, Michael bridges his extensive experience as an EMCC Coach and Mentor Practitioner and an enlightening author of 4 books, Trustee of the Institute of Leadership, and a sought-after freelance contractor. Glad to have you on this call today. How's your day going?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me onto the show today. Really is appreciated. Yeah, day is it's still, well, it's not really early, but it's still early days, should we say. So not too bad. Just in the rhythm of getting into the whole festive spirit, should we say. But yeah, everything's all good. Everything's all good.
Fantastic. So I kind of like starting off the conversation by asking first, what are you really thankful for? I mean, throughout the 2023, some people say yes, it's post-COVID, but the truth is that it's still that traumatic, really coming out of the post-COVID. So what are you really thankful for with everything that has, happened in 2023?
I'm going to be very cliche. I'm very thankful for my family members. I'm very thankful for my true and genuine friends. And when I'm talking about family members, the first ones that come to mind is my immediate family, my mother, my sister, my father, my wife, and also extended family as well. So my in-laws, my cousins, aunts and uncles, when I see them on occasions, and the friends that have really supported me during this whole journey, especially this year, because October is when my year started, and prior to that there was a lot of sort of like life stuff that was happening that required a lot of energy, time, money, etc. So relationships have been key this year. Relationships have been key, so all of the friendships, all of the different WhatsApp voice notes that I've had with different people, you're all being remembered this year.
I can imagine. It just reminds me of that. There's an African word that says Ubuntu. I am because you are, and
100%.
it just kind of wraps up all that you have said. Relationship. I mean, at the end, we need people, whether in career, in life, and all of that. So that's fantastic. I mean, the year has been interesting. So what are you excited about? Talking about 2024. You said your year has started, but what are you really excited about? Can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the beginning of each year, I have an intention. So the beginning of this year was about masculinity, hence why relationships was such a big thing. And it was the traditional idea of masculinity, not meaning to offend anyone, obviously, but really centered around how am I going to make sure that my word is my bond. It's less surrounding gender or more focused on the attributes that the male energy sort of like creates. So next year for me is definitely centered around wealth, holistic wealth in many ways, but wealth is a big thing. Again, my wealth has been growing over the years, most definitely, but there's going to be a different edge. So with that in mind, that naturally tailors me towards my portfolio career, that naturally tailors me towards contracting, that naturally tailors me towards investing, and that naturally tailors me towards my business. So one of the key things that I'm really pushing is my accredited coach training program. So that should be launched by next year. And I'm excited to make it a thing, should we say.
Fantastic. Wow. That's very good to know. You said something about masculinity, and like you said, well, not to offend anybody, but I think I mean I could say I'm a testament to that aspect. I saw you actually took out time to travel, the nature of man is that adventure. Before technology and all of that, we were nomads. We were just going until we began to settle, create new technology, build all the skyscrapers and all the iron birds and all of that. So we still need that flavor, that touch, and like you said, your role as man, provide, take care of family, and also a legacy. And we'll be going a little bit more into that, in the conversation. But can you just share with us a little bit about your life and how it influenced your career path? How you delved into personal development and became a speaker. You talked about coaching, contracting developments. Like, a lot is going on for you right there. What inspired you and what brought you here?
Yeah, I mean, can I really label myself as one thing? Not really. I'm a whole bunch of things, but I know that I'm Michael Tabirade. I've come from humble backgrounds, as you highlighted before. Both parents are Ghanaian, and they came from, humility, so to speak. Grew up in southwest London, in a place called Roehampton. A great community, but again, impoverished in many different ways. And, there was a stage in my life where, my parents split up. They're on great terms, by the way. I have a great relationship with both my parents. But it was a situation where, number one, leadership was installed with me quite early on, being the eldest between me and my sister. And so certain decision-making sort of capabilities needed to be developed quite early on. Now, that started to be exuded into my sports arena. So I thought I was going to be an athlete. I could run 100 meters at 12 in like 11.5 seconds at 12, so I was very fast at a young age, which tailored me into things like rugby, football. I was getting scouts. I was doing a lot of stuff from a young age. So that multidisciplinarian thing has never really changed. I was quite active within the church. So I became a choir master at 15 for a very long time, for about 15
you
odd
play an
years.
instrument, I guess.
Well, yeah, I can play the guitar, but I was actually the maestro, so to speak. And it was a very traditional church. It was a Catholic church and everything else, but it was that sense of community that I was able to adopt. Now, moving on from there, because I'm trying to condense this, I was at secondary school doing very well in my education, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor, because of potential prestige, money, working with people, and my love for science. And essentially, that dream failed in a way because I spent about 10 years trying to get into postgraduate medicine, doing all these exams. And I didn't get the grades. I tried again and again and again. I remember trying 5 times after university. And this was working admin jobs plus doing studies afterwards. Because the aim for me was to get to a world where I could potentially, number one, understand the medical, but two, also understand the management, so I could liaise the two together. But because I started to realize that medicine wasn't necessarily for me, I stuck within management. So I started to develop all these skills and relationships within a niche of the healthcare system that led me onto commissioning, project management, implementation. Now, don't worry, I'm getting to a point. Hopefully you can see the things in that story.
I can
But
see it.
good. So whilst all of that stuff was happening and I started to decline my interest in medicine, I started to move into entrepreneurship. And it was when I met somebody at work who was like, have you read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad? This was back in 2014. And I said no. She told me about it, read it in 2 days, much quicker than she did. And it introduced me into a whole world of entrepreneurship. I was diving into mentorship for property investing, trading, network marketing, public speaking, all this different stuff. Now, all this money had been thrown in. I went all in because I was like, I need to change my family tree. But the problem with that is I didn't truly know what I wanted. I just knew I wanted to make money. And it was only at an event by a guy called Andy Harrington who basically said, you can make money from your ideas. And I knew this, but the way he said it ignited me. And so that sent a whole trajectory from 2015-16 to developing my coaching practice. I started to publish more videos after I went to a Les Brown event. and more people started to see me speak. And that's
Wow.
when the coaching inquiries started to come in. Now, it wasn't like crazy, but it started to build and build and build and build. And, my first coaching client was paid from a friend because she said money talks.
Wow.
And so this led me into just pre-pandemic, where I got my training qualification as a coach practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially what happened was, during that time, I was reaching, I would say, more senior management within my career within healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
but the leadership was toxic.
Wow.
And so I had to meet a decision. I had an insatiable feeling that
Mm-hmm.
pushed me to leave the place that I was in at the moment. And that's when I lent into contracting, something I explored many years before, and I actually did, but I didn't realize I was doing. But this was the time
Wow.
where I made an intention to do it. And so in
Wow.
2021, I got my first
Mm-hmm.
contract, and I've never looked back. And since then,
Wow.
it's just been contracting and coaching.
Fantastic. It's so much that you've condensed in that place. If it was a hamburger, I mean, it wouldn't feel like that. Like, it's so much. I mean, I
Yeah.
can see the connection between, you just talked about your athletic nature. I can
Hmm.
see that connection, that drive. You picked up a book, and in 2 days, that drive to, like, when I start something, I want to just finish it. I want to reach the finish line. I'm just going all in, and I can see that fuel in you. Even your story, it reminds me of a statement. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath, the advantages of disadvantages. Even Sir Ken Robinson also talked about this, finding your element, how you had to own your story. All right, the incident in your early age, it made you to grow up faster in terms of, it accelerated your growth. You understand? Like, it was like a catalyst. Now, for somebody else, it's like, oh my gosh, things are not going well. I mean, look at all the things that has happened to me. But it was not an excuse. I lost my mom at an early age, to TB, and for the first
Sorry to hear
three
that.
years of my life, she was not really there. And so my sister tells me that, Edward, among all your siblings, if there's anybody that has an excuse in terms of to give up and all that, that should be you. But look at what you've done. And it kind of really buttresses that part, that regard, or in spite of the things that life throws at you, that you can own your story, you can change the narrative. And that's what you have done, with all that you have done from 20, and you just 2015, just like 2015, just here. And look at where you are, coaching your
Amen.
friends, and and all that. And like someone said, the true test of your value is when your close relative can take out their card or open their wallet and say, I want to pay you for your service. Beyond saying that I believe in you, they commit to the process. So you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank
And
you.
with where you are right now, and you talked about the coaching or the contracting that you're in right now. You're into it, and the last from 2021 to 2023. Can you tell us? So how do you navigate the complexities of being a contractor in the UK? Bearing in mind that, I mean, we have audience that are from all over the world. There are some who just came into the UK, like myself, right? At this moment of this recording, I'm just less than a little over a year in the UK. And for professionals who probably have been playing in other space, in Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East, and they came into the UK, how does one navigate the complexities in this space and still try to integrate or bring in their value? Can you share some light regarding that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So, again, there's certain nuances I may not be able to speak to because I'm not international in that sense. But one thing I will say for the international individuals listening to this is visa requirements still apply, most definitely, unless you are working outside of IR35 and you set up a business within the UK, but then you can outsource how you want to outsource. But that's a different matter altogether. So in terms of navigating this space, I would say the first thing is you need to be clear about what value you provide as an individual. And what I specifically mean by that is you would have gone through some sort of work experience that edifies maybe project management, program management, change management, business analysis, whatever it may be. be extremely confident in what you have done previously before, because that confidence needs to be translated and transcribed when speaking to agents in terms of the value you provide. So for example, as a program manager, I'm going to be using certain language, for example, like scoping or planning or delivery or
Portfolio.
risk management, portfolio management, all this kind of stuff there. All these different things highlight to the individual that, okay, I know of the world. Now, I could be doing lip service, but what's the next layer? The next layer is being able to highlight key examples that edify, that you're not just saying whatever, but you've got key experience. So there needs to be a framework or methodology that you can speak to.
Yeah.
So for me, it's big on the program management cycle or the project management cycle or the commissioning cycle, as an example, as things that I lean into. Now, there are key sort of individuals you need to speak to. And I've spoken about this at length, and you'll know about this already. So number one, speak to other contractors to understand and unearth their experiences, just to understand how they got in, and if they can sort of like throw out any contacts that you could speak to. The second thing is speak to past employers and or colleagues, because we're in a stage right now where the portfolio career is becoming even more normal within the UK. More and more organizations are wanting to take on contractors because it's less risk for them. And so there may be opportunities that are amongst us, especially post COVID. The third person is to speak to an accountant, and the accountant will give you a strong idea of the different types of tax that exists, the inside of IR35, the outside of IR35,
Yeah.
and they may give you an illustration of what you may make based on what the market is saying you would earn as a project manager or program manager. And finally, speak to agents. They want one thing. They want to find people who can actually deliver on the job, or who say they can deliver on a job, so that they can get paid. Okay? And so you can speak to them in terms of understanding what the cycle of the market is looking like, what type of roles are out there at the moment for a person like yourself, in addition to just forming that relationship. So those are the 4 key people you should speak to, and the sort of way you should start thinking about navigating into the space.
Fantastic. It's interesting, you talked about the 4 people, because it kind of still lays on the fact that you need people. It's something that you had started up the conversation with. You have to be good with people, networking and things like that. But here is the thing. So for someone who recently just moved into the UK, or they've been into the UK, they just want to go into contracting, if there were 5 steps you think this is how you take, you talked about being confident in your skill, your portfolio, your story, your framework, and how you deliver your service, or whatever domain and all of that. You said quite a lot, but if there were 5 steps for someone to go from A to at least landing their first contract, all right, you talked about key people they need to speak to, about 4 of them. But if you were to take a step, all right, I have experience. I just want to go into this place, or I'm tired, like you got tired of, working within the system, more like an internal or entrepreneur, because you have the entrepreneurial spirit. But you just want to go now from an employee to a contractor. What are 5 things that you think that someone needs to really pay attention to? Can you just take us on that journey?
Yeah, and I'm going to throw in this caveat. This can't come from a place of desperation. There has to be a level of patience. Sometimes it happens very quickly, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't happen quickly, that's a combination between market conditions and or how you're communicating yourself. But the first thing I would say is, if you are coming to this place, and it's not different to what I'm saying before, but I would say make sure that you have some contractors you can speak to. I can't edify this enough. That's the first step. Speak to some contractors and start to understand their world. It has to be individuals who you would like to transition into that space to, because they may give you insights that may help the next step, which is developing a really robust CV. Now, the problem that a lot of international international individuals may get, is that they may have real world experience, but those within the UK don't recognize the organizations or the types of things that they're doing. So the CV has to be developed in such a way that is succinct and clear and has a really recognizable format. Avoid any pictures, avoid graphics on there. It just needs to be text, wide margins, font size 10 or 11, depending on what it is, no more than 3 pages. You talk about your profile at the top, which edifies the type of job that you're looking to do and experience that you have with key skills.
Yeah.
Again, understand underneath that you have your expertise, and then following that you have relevant experience, and then other experience if you so wish to add that. In addition to the trainings and qualifications and stuff you have, you may get user service such as Purple CV or whoever to write this on your behalf. That's a paid service. Or you could use ChatGPT with good prompting to help you engineer a good quality CV without lying. It needs to be recognizable to you.
Yeah.
The third step I would say is, okay, and this is in liaison to the CV stuff, you need to be able to understand what different job boards are available for contracting in your specific niche. And they have to be able to support a visa as well, if this is the situation you're in. Because the same rules apply. The same rules apply, especially if it's inside of IR35, and I can talk about that later. And so this is what I did, at least. This is not different to anyone. I would scour the whole market, literally the whole market. You could use something like CV Library, and you're flicking through, you're just seeing exactly what is out there. What do they pay? What sort of things are they asking for, etc., etc. Which leads to the fourth step. You're trying to craft essentially a supporting statement and or answers to these questions that enables you to effectively give good responses based on what the market is showing. Because what you're going to do is filter this stuff down and use keywords, okay, that allows you to find the right sort of roles. The fifth step is really a culmination between what I said before in terms of the relationships and activity. You have to be in a situation where you are consistently applying for roles. LinkedIn, CV Library, also looking at places like Reed, JobServe, etc., etc. These are all different things that you'll need to do in order to make sure that you are consistently giving yourself the opportunity to find a role and speaking to different people, which covers the previous step that I spoke about before. This is a game of numbers. Once you understand the qualitative aspects of what the market is looking for your type of expertise, is consistency. You have to apply for different things. Expect to get interviews within 24 to 48 hours. Expect, job recruiters to message you straight away. When you sign up for a job board, that triggers a response to the recruiters, and they have your information now. And so they may send you an email saying, are you available for da 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 da, or they may call you, whatever it may be. You need to be able to know what to say on the phone. This is not a discovery call. It may start up like that, where you may start to learn what they're asking for, etc., etc. But this is your opportunity to sell yourself. So, they may ask questions like, okay, so what do you specialize in? What different organizations have you worked in? What type of work are you looking for? What rate are you looking for? With the rate question, again, that's tricky because if they're not offering you a role, they need to be clear about, okay, what roles do they have on offer? So let's say, for example, they don't give you any roles and they say, what rates are you looking for? You'd have to say, well, it depends on what comes through to me. Keep it simple like that. You don't give anything away. When you do get the role, obviously, or they do have a role for you, should I say, they may say, what rate are you looking for again? And you would say, okay, what's the range?
Yeah.
There's always a range. I'm sorry, there's always a range. And you can't, if you know you're good at something, it has to be top market range or nothing. There have been so many instances in my first year where people have tried to shortchange me, and I've been like, no, I'd rather be out of work, which I haven't really been. It was only 2022 where I decided to just have a bit of a break for 4 months. So yeah, those are the 5 steps I would say.
Wow, fantastic! Like that's like a masterclass condensed. And interestingly, you've talked about this a lot on your YouTube channel. For those who are listening or watching this podcast, the truth is that Michael has mass loads of content on his YouTube page. You can check it out. I will leave it in the show notes of this podcast on how to get into contracting and so much that you have talked about. For those of you who are really interested in going into contracting, I believe that it's I think one of the new normal in terms of the digital economy right now. I like to use the word the digital renaissance. Okay, that's that transformation and all of that. So, I wanted to go into the personal mastery and leadership aspect of you, because, like you said, you're a multidisciplinary person, and maybe that's what inspired the name of your your coaching platform, Masteri Group. You know, in terms of personal mastery and leadership. So, as a leadership and mastery coach, what do you believe are the essential qualities, of effective leadership, starting from the personal, and even leading others as well? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. So for me, leadership is living by example. That's what
Mm,
it is. And really, you need to be able to cultivate and understand that you affect yourself and you affect other people.
mm,
And I do have a whole framework from a professional standpoint of what leadership looks like, but I'm going to talk from a more, I'm going to say, communal standpoint.
mm,
So there are five key factors that I believe create great leadership. The first one, which is a cliche, is authenticity. I call it audacious authenticity because I think it's brave to be truly yourself. And if you
yeah.
think about authenticity, it's broken down into three factors, scientifically or psychologically, at least anyway. So that is living authentically, that is not being able to self alienate, and that is not being influenced by external influences. And so,
Mm,
if you can manage those based on self monitoring effectively, you have an authentic individual that people can trust. They open up in terms of vulnerability and rapport, which we know creates transformational relationships as
mm-hmm,
opposed to transactional ones.
mm-hmm,
So that's the first thing. Once you've lent into that authenticity, the next thing is crystal clarity. So having the ability to be clear about what your goals are, how they lean into objectives, and how they lean into tasks each day. If you
mm,
can't be clear about where you're going in your life and it's not aligned to some level of values which is linked to your authenticity, it's
mm,
going to be very difficult for people to trust and follow you because your word is not necessarily your bond. And so
mm,
people like to follow people who are clear, who are still firm in their approach but still themselves.
yeah.
The third thing is considered communication. And that really is your emotional intelligence level model, so to speak. If you look at the model that was popularized by Daniel Goleman in 1995, he's looking at five main factors: self-management, self-awareness, social management, social awareness, and
Mm-hmm,
motivation. And leadership is within that mix, as well as conflict management, persuasion, etc., etc. So your ability to express what is in here and in here to others is how you create influence and how you create that glue to enable people to go on a journey with you. They say in this leadership book that leadership is actually a process, okay? Because
mm-hmm,
that removes people from this idea that it's trait focused or whatever it may be, and it's a process that encompasses somebody who's defined as a leader and a group of individuals who are working towards a common goal. So
mm,
this is where considered communication is key. The fourth thing is based on voracious vitality. So what do you do in your personal life that gives you the energy to enable you to do all of this stuff? Because
yeah.
if you're eating McDonald's at 12 o'clock at night, you're not going to sleep until 4 o'clock in the morning to then wake up at 6.
Mm-hmm,
What are you doing to ensure that you have the right company around you so that
mm,
you feel lifted and inspired to take action? So
mm,
voracious vitality is a responsibility that we must have upon ourselves in order for us to be effective around others. And the final thing is persuasive perception. And really, this is centered around your personal brand. This is really centered around how you present yourself. If you're in a situation where you don't respect how you may be perceived, or you don't have any awareness around that, then you may be perceived incorrectly, which is not what we want, especially in this digital age as well.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
those for me are the five core factors that create
Fantastic.
performance, at least, which lead to good leadership.
Wow, that's that's incredible. you just went right into it, and it's interesting you mentioned personal brand, and of course you also talked about, before you got into coaching, started creating content after attending the Les Brown event, and it all emphasizes the importance of that, building that personal brand. And I myself have been an advocate of personal branding, because I understand that people will never forget how you make them feel, and
Hmm.
how you make them feel is the impression you leave in the room. Especially when you're not there, what they now remember, and it's now trickles down into your digital footprint. Talking about personal branding, how does one build this culture? Because it seems like a necessity in our current dispensation. It's not nice to have anymore. But how does one kind of build their personal brand around their personal passion? So when people hear about personal branding, they think, oh, you have to become an influencer, you have to become some executive, and things like that. In a nutshell, okay, not without even having to go deeply into it, but talking about personal branding, what are three things that you think are very critical to build a personal brand in the current age that we live in right now?
I'll try to be brief. Okay, so number one, lean into your authentic edge. So understand yourself better. Number two, be clear about what your sense of values are, because if you don't understand what's important to you, it's hard for you to communicate a message. Number three is to really dive into different interests that you're curious about. And when you
Yeah.
dive into those different things, really learn about what that stuff is. Number four, once you dove into those different areas, then what you need to do is be in a situation where you start to teach people about this stuff.
Mm.
And number five, educate people about this stuff, share your journey around this stuff, and be open to opportunities that may enable other people to be helped, or, support them on their journey. So that's
Wow.
what I would say.
That's pretty much fantastic. That's oh, wow, that's interesting. So you talked about the mastery method,
Hmm.
like you have a framework and things like that. Can you just talk a little bit about the method, how it evolved, and how can individuals apply this to have a sense of achievement, on purpose and direction in their life? So how did it evolve, and how can people apply this, to make some progress in their life?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I've already highlighted elements of the mastery method via that performance framework that I spoke
Yeah.
about. But in the same instance, the other element of that I haven't spoken about is the four pillars of mastery, which is encapsulated in all of this stuff. Now, with the four pillars of mastery, it is really talking about four main areas. So, number one, it's looking at performance, then progress, then it's people, then person. So, really and truly, number one, when it comes to progress, you're looking at your portfolio career, you're
Hmm.
looking at finances, and you're also looking at business. I'm not going to break down each one, but essentially, it's a will. And you're doing a gap analysis of really trying to understand, where am I at? Where do I want to go? What is missing in that? It's a pure consulting project management approach, you know.
I can relate.
And so yeah, exactly. Because all change is project management. All change.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, it's utilizing those principles to then say, okay, how do I understand, how do I reach, and how do I expand? Which is, if you know already, that's the name of my first book, and the principles that underpins everything.
Yeah.
So really, the mastery method is doing that at base level, and then leaning into those five different sort of like factors of performance to help you get to those spaces.
Wow, wow, phenomenal, interesting. You talked about your book now. I'm aware that you are the author of four books. And by the way, I'm going to leave the link to the books on the show notes on this podcast as well, so that if you're interested in it. But can you just talk a little bit about the four books that you've authored? What are the titles, and what the focus are really about? And what inspired you really to begin to write books? And just a little bit about your books.
Yeah, so I started writing the book because I went to an event with a property colleague that I met one day, and on the event, the person was like, "You don't need me to do this; you can do this yourself," and that inspired me to start writing because loads of people used to take advice from me from early. I don't know why. Maybe it was a quality I had, but people did that. So I got 4 books. First one being Understand, Reach, Expand, 15 Super Effective Ways to Manage Your Mind. So that's just a way to manage what's inside here so that
Yeah.
you can get what you want outside. The second one is Desire, the Cornerstone Between Nothing and Success. It's a motivational book, really, to kick you up the backside. The third one is Happiness, the Fundamental Keys to Experiencing It Daily. So I talk about the different ideas surrounding happiness in the world and what I think happiness is. And the final one is The Power of Goals, which is really an instructional framework, process-driven book that can
Yeah.
help you both in your personal and professional world experience you actually achieving your goals.
Wow, interesting, interesting. Wow, author of 4 books. So does that mean another book is coming in 2024?
I mean, we'll see, we'll see. But
Let's
yeah,
see.
why not?
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's nice. As we gradually come to wrap up this interesting conversation that we are having here, you really got a lot going on for you. An author, a coach, a contractor, a family man, and a trustee of a board. There's a lot going on for you right now. Even if I can relate as a multidisciplinary person myself, but how do you get that sense of balance in life? You're a sport person. You love music. You play the guitar. So much going on. So how do you get that work-life balance, especially in the dispensation we're in right now, to be more effective in what you do?
Yeah, do you know what? The idea of balance is a lie. And I think it's more about harmony or symphony. Really and truly, if you know truly what you want, you'll make it work. It's that simple. You'll set
Wow.
up the systems, you'll have the people around you, you'll do the routines, or you'll just do it. And it doesn't have to be some fancy, sexy approach because not everyone's going to see that journey. You know that journey,
Yeah.
you can sort that out
Sure.
later on. What you deliver in terms of value for yourself and others is what's key. And so for me, it's being abundantly clear of what I want to achieve in my life. And this is why the portfolio career is so good because it's not pursuing something, it's creating a mindset in terms of what I want my career to look like. So that's how I'm able to do it. That's my short answer, if I'm honest with you. I can give you a fancy answer, but that's the honest answer.
There's one other thing that is my value that, and you talked about it a lot in terms of being authentic, and that's one of the things that drive me as a person. I mean, having this conversation that's unscripted, it's just just the conversation about life and things that have driven you, and you just nailed it. Like, it's, I mean, the concept of work-life balance is a lie, because if you really want it, you go for it. You burn the midnight oil. You just find a way around it, and that is it. And I think it centers around the thing you talked about in one of your book, that desire. Because once there is a burning desire, and Napoleon Hill talks about it as well in his book, The Think and Grow Rich. That desire is what keeps you going. And I'm sure in your book you narrated it significantly well in light of our current reality. And I'm if you're on this show, you need to get that book so that you can understand that desire is what keeps you going. You can harness so much that you've got inside of you. And the truth is, we are all multi-potentialites, and we've been sold a lie that go to school, read one thing, and do that for the rest of your life. And people end up being bored, depressed, and they lose their spark in life. For you to be consistent, you need that curiosity. I read a lot, and like you mentioned, people came to me early in life about advice, life, career, schoolwork, and I was like, you're 3 years ahead of me, why are you asking me this question? And but I realized that the more they asked me that questions like that, it became a necessity for me to build myself so that I'm ready to give an answer. And that's one of the things that drive me, again, talking about people. How do you build that relationship? How do you network? Let it not come as though it is transactional because I'm building a network because I need you to get something and things like that. But how do you build that authentic network so that you build relationships that last?
Yeah, so it's moving away from complete formal professional land and just treating people as human beings. And what that means broken down is essentially being able to be vulnerable with individuals because
Wow.
people need to have the ability to want to trust you. You know, they talk about psychological safety and there's a model for all of that stuff. And you can tell I'm very frameworks focused, but I like to expand
Sure.
outside of it.
Hmm.
But people need to be able to feel comfortable in the room, raise their hand, interact, and ask questions and be themselves.
Yeah.
So the way you do that is give them breadcrumbs of vulnerability where you're basically saying, as the leader, I'm happy to share a bit about myself. And it's not prying on them, but being patient in a space where you build rapport. So yes, there will be an exchange of information, but in the same instance, are you, as much as you're active and deep listening and asking empowering and effective questions, are you also speaking about yourself so that people feel like they're not being played? And so
Yeah.
those interactions over time, creating those opportunities, eventually develops into a relationship, and that's how it works.
Authentic,
That's how it works.
authentic one. Wow, that's fantastic. And because in the age we live right now, it's about connection. In as much as we have so many digital connection, but what goes on behind the digital connection is what builds that network. And I also believe that it's one of the key things for one to be successful in whichever career they find themselves. The power of connection. In wrapping this up, I'd like to just talk about the future goals and your legacy. So, as a contractor, I've read a couple of your, your work, and I know that I can sense that you are a futurist, somebody who thinks ahead. So, wearing that lens of a futurist, where do you see the contracting space or the personal leadership space in the next 3 years? 2024, it's a new landscape, you know. So where do you see that? Okay,
Yes.
let me put a caveat on this. So there is this Masonic principle that the world ended in 2012. They really made a movie about it. I also try to study times and dispensation. And whether you like it or not, from 2012 to now, there was a dispensation talking about technology. Social media skyrocketed to another level. Chat GPT, AI, automation, analytics, and all of that went to the next level. And the truth is, right on this podcast, it just occurred to me that 2024 is another cycle, is another 10 years after 2012. The reality is that there is a new normal right now. And most people don't know about it yet. But as a futurist in this space, as a contractor, someone who is into personal mastery, I think you're living your purpose. You're living your best life. So, what are the things that one should look out for in order to leverage the hidden opportunities in this new dispensation?
Yeah. So for me right now, whatever is happening right now needs to be hyper focused. So for example, if you're an expert within a certain space, you need to be the best. Because what's going to end up happening is that we're going to be heavily reliant upon systems and technology to do a lot of this work. So I'll give you an example. If you want to know where we're going, you can always look at government. Government are the slowest to jump on board. And outside of that, everyone is like 5, 10 years ahead of time.
Yeah.
So when government starts employing AI technology and all of this kind of stuff there, that's when you know things have changed. So the
Sure.
first thing I would say is systems are going to be more apparent. The second thing is there's going to be less permanent roles, 100%. There's going to be more contracting opportunities, but a lot of those contracting opportunities are going to lean towards finance and also, I would argue, the tech space. There will be opportunities for general management, but that will become, it depends what industry. So I can't say that with confidence, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
I think there will also be, though, a gap that's growing in terms of the well-being space, so to speak. So just supporting, and they're going to badge it under health,
Yeah.
okay? But really, it's all of this stuff that you and I speak about around personal, professional development. But
Yeah.
how you sort of like present that as a brand is going to be fundamental. And so it's essentially everything we've discussed, but hyper focused. So it's
Hyper-focused.
having that mentality.
Wow, I like the word hyper focused. And I mean, if you want to take advantage of this shifting landscape in terms of where the world is going right now, you just have to be at the helms of, that conversation. You have to be at the front of it, championing this conversation. And the truth is, it's a new space, and the reality is that nobody has been there before. We are the one laying the blueprint, laying the tracks for others to follow through. So do it afraid, go all in, like you said, be confident in it, believe in it, and own your story. It's something that needs to happen. In terms of as we finally wrap this up, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you? Do you have a community? How do people get to know you and be part of the great amazing thing that you're doing?
Yeah, no, I think the easiest access is sign up to my newsletter. So I
Okay.
talk about all things surrounding strategy, leadership, and also performance. But I also share my lessons on my journey as well. So you can
Okay.
do that via LinkedIn. So the second thing is LinkedIn.
Okay.
Prolific on there, as you know. I
Yeah.
post most days, not all the time, but I
Yeah.
do what I can. And
Yeah.
finally on YouTube as well.
On YouTube. What's the name they search for?
Michael Tabaradi. Just Michael
Fan-
Tabaradi everywhere. Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. So I'm still going to leave that in the show notes of this podcast or the YouTube video, wherever you're seeing this. And it's interesting. You've been generous enough to share one of your products. You talked about, securing the job plus contracting course. You have provided us a link with £50 off. Wow,
Yep.
that's like Christmas came early. So thank you so much. So Michael also has courses, all right, in contracting for those who want to go into contracting space, and also how to secure the job. So I'm going to put it in the show notes. With this link, you'll get it at £50 off. All right. I'm for sure clear about the contracting. I think the course is 120 or so, and so you're taking up £50 off. That is phenomenal. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to put that in the show notes. So as we wrap up now, I'm looking for three things. I like working in frameworks as well. So
No
three things
problem.
that you'd like to leave the audience with, but I would like you to add one of those things. All right, leave them with one of those things. Will what would your twenty? Will the child you once were be proud of the man you now are? Then add two things to that, and why?
Yeah, so yes, he would be. He'd be very proud. And that's because number one, he was true to himself. He wasn't afraid to be true to himself. Number two, he did everything he could to make sure that his word was his bond. And number three, he was just trying to learn. He was just trying to learn as much as possible. Those are the three key things.
Wow. Wow. Three key things. Fantastic. So you have already mumbled it up in one. So in answering that question, you left us with three words. So what's your favorite book?
That's a hard question for me to answer. I don't have a favorite book. I've
Okay,
read a
what three books shaped your thinking and brought you here? I know you mentioned one in your conversation, but there were three books that shaped, your ideology about life and your drive and all that. What would they be?
there's so many. There's so many. I'm going to say
Okay, make it
Think and Grow.
five.
No, I'm gonna keep it simple.
All right.
So Think and Grow Rich.
Yep.
There's also the four. I've forgotten what it's called again. It's not the Four Seasons.
Tim
I'll,
Ferriss.
no, it's not Tim Ferriss. I'll need to come back to that,
All right.
unfortunately. And then the final one, business book, is Key Person of Influence.
Keepers of Influence.
Yeah, by Daniel Priestley.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, wow. Think and Grow Rich, Keepers of Influence. The third one you said you'll come back to that. Can you replace it with one that's right now on this call?
So, um, I'd have to look at my phone, but maybe there's so many. There's so many.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna talk about one that I'm reading right now. So
Okay.
one that I'm reading right now is called Ultimate Wealth Mastery. That's it.
Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
Fantastic. Wow, that's good. That's good. Wow, thank you so much. So, as we wrap up, can you leave us with your favorite quote as we wrap up?
Yeah, so between stimulus and space, there is power, and within that power is our ability to decide. That was written by Dr. Frankl, the guy who obviously was in the Nazi concentration camps. Yeah, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning.
Search for
So
meaning.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Wow, that is so much. You've left us with so much wealth today for anyone listening. There is so much power to be harnessed when you go through or go over this conversation again. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends. Michael, I just want to thank you for your time today, for sharing with us and also being authentic, being vulnerable, and share your lessons, your journey, and all of that. I believe that for those who are listening or watching today, when I mean whenever they are watching this, they will come back here 3 months from today, 6 months from today, and say, I learned something great. Thank you so much. Do have a fantastic day. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you.